little minor update on the stupid riverboat idea here. I found a good deal on a 4.8 for a couple $100, like 20 minutes away from me. So we're gonna shelve the 5.3 for a different project. I figured. I mean, I've never had a 4.8. I've always wanted one. I don't know why. Something about the 4.8 fascinates me. I'm not sure what it is. I just like, I don't know. Maybe it's because they're a little harder to find, or maybe just because they're, I don't know. I just like small little displacement, efficient, powerful little motors. And the 4.8 is a good example of that. But I figured, with this little 15-foot boat, it wouldn't hurt to have less power. Either way, it's going to have entirely too much power for the size of the boat and the weight of the boat. So I figured, what the hell? We'll go from these are 280, 290 horse, and this is 270, so it's not a big difference. But the main thing is if I'm trying to go, trying to do these long hauls, because like I said, the where I can put my boat in the river 5 to 6 minutes from here, I have access to miles and miles and I mean hundreds of miles of rivers. So if I want to do some long hauls on it, I got to get as good a fuel economy as I can. So maybe going down to the 4.8 it'll get minutely better fuel economy than the 5.3. So there's probably people thinking like, what the hell are you putting a V8 in it for if you're trying to get fuel economy? It's like, yeah, I know. Well, do you want to listen to a little 4-cylinder for, hours on end, or I don't. Just because it has 270 horsepower doesn't mean I got to use all of it all the time. And these motors are pretty efficient for what they are. And it's got to turn a big Berkeley impeller. You can't put a 100 horsepower 4-cylinder in front of a Berkeley. I just don't think it's going to do very well. It's too big of an impeller. I mean, maybe it would in a small little lightweight boat. Maybe it'd be fine. I don't know. Ideally, probably it would be like a small turbo diesel engine, like a 4-cylinder turbo diesel. That would be perfect for this project, but yeah. You point me in the right direction of one that's readily available and cheap to purchase, then I'd be right on it. But that's because there's not. So I was going to hunt around, try and find a car intake for it. But as you can see, I got one of my Ford manifolds on the engine. One of the adapters built. I don't know if you can kind of see it, but it's just 2 header flanges welded together. Windsor header flange on the outside and an LS flange on the inside. They're welded together. These 2 holes in the center, the Windsor flange had to be clearanced a little bit to fit those ones, and then over here on the end, the Windsor flange had to be cut off to fit the outside bolts on the LS flange. But then I just put studs, threaded the outside flange so they could have studs to hold the manifold. I don't know, I think it'll work pretty good. And I got these manifolds and risers for $150. I mean, this is, I guess if you're gonna put wet exhaust on an LS, this is probably the cheapest way to do it. If you don't mind making the adapter. The adapter's making that's kind of a little more time consuming than you would think, but the second one will go a little quicker now that I know what the hell I'm trying to do. But they are heavy. That's the downfall to these. The other downfall is they don't flow for shit. They have terrible flow characteristics, logged manifolds like this. But I don't, again, who cares? You know, it's going to have enough power. They could sap 20, 30 horsepower. I don't care. It's going to have enough power. So, but I figured with the weight of these things, it's not going to be anything attached to the cylinder heads. So I was thinking some like aluminum plates or something like this that would go from head to manifold on the front and the back, just to help support them. So I'm not totally reliant on my adapters. I don't know. We'll see. I'll probably end up doing that. It wouldn't be hard to do. I mean, the back of the damn thing almost lines right up. If you look down the back of the head, so that's like kind of eerie. Actually, it lines up perfectly. I found some rubber, like 3-inch marine grade rubber elbows that will just turn these and head them straight out. And so with these being your water exit, you run a hose down to, it would be this here, and this will be your inlet. So here, some of them they run the water inlet off of the pump or the outdrive, or wherever you're getting your water from. Some of them run them right into the engine and then out into the manifolds. That's how my other boat was plumbed, and we went the other way, where you run the water through the manifolds first and then into the engine, which helps to preheat the water and get more temperature into the engine. Because that boat, I never got more than 110, 120 degrees into it, and after doing that, combined with restricting at the thermostat housing, I was able to get 140, 50, 60 degrees out of the engine, which is just better for it, So I think we'll do the same thing. We'll run the water off the pump into the back. In between here, you have 2 gaskets, and in between the gaskets, there's a shim that has just a very small bleeder holes in it. Excuse me. So the air can bleed out into the riser, but you're not losing your cooling water and just dumping it back out the exhaust. So it'll fill this whole thing, and then it'll enter the engine, and then the caps have their own fitting on them, so it'll just be a simple hose running on both sides, and the other ones maybe we'll just run them right up over top back to the riser. So it should be easy enough. But like I was saying, I was going to put a car intake on it, because we measured it up, and this intake in particular, and I'm sure I got a bunch of the older truck intakes, pretty much the same. It would be 4 inches above the gunnels of the boat. So I figured, okay, we'll put the car intake on it, because they sit roughly 4 inches lower. But by the time you get the riser on there, I mean, what the hell's the point? The risers are going to be sitting up only a few inches, so they'd be sitting up higher than the car intake anyways. So I kind of figured, why swap out a car? Why swap into a car intake that doesn't have good, doesn't produce a good bottom end torque? I mean, if I can get away with it, well, why not run a truck intake, especially this one? I mean, if you look at the comparisons between this intake and like an LS1 or even an LS6 manifold on an engine dyno, these intakes are fantastic. the torque production, the horsepower, all through the RPM range is excellent with this intake. So the only thing is it's a 4-bolt throttle body and it's drive-by-wire. So I'm going to be getting a 4-bolt to 3-bolt adapter and going to the old throttle body and running drive-by cable. So I'll just have to make some kind of a bracket for the throttle cable. You know, I haven't decided if I'm going to run it like this with the throttle body facing towards the rear or the throttle body facing towards the front. Because we were talking about putting a Corvette pulley on the front of this thing, just to try and give us the most amount of interior room. You know, you're sacrificing a lot in the interior when you run a jet. The engine's got to sit a lot farther forward than any other setup. So the engine's almost going to be in the middle of the boat. And if I'm going to get 4 people in the boat, I need to be as conscious of, you know, how much space I have in front of the engine as possible, even if it's, you know, I mean, you're only saving 2 or 3 inches there, but every inch counts. So if I could find I don't know, I think you can buy new ones for $50, $60. The only thing that's going to be running off of this thing is the alternator, which is probably going to be mounted off to the side over here. And you can run it off of either groove, you know, doesn't really matter. So, got to get the other adapter made. Now, the PCM and the wiring harness, what I was thinking of doing is mounting the PCM essentially on the engine somewhere. Whether it be in the front, you know, bolted to some kind of bracket or something on the front or the rear. I mean, it's going to depend on which way I get the intake mounted. So the 2 jet bolts that I've had, they have like a junction terminal, and you know, it makes installing and uninstalling the engine a piece of cake, because everything that has to do with the boat, it just goes to a junction terminal that's attached to the engine. You know, you figure oil pressure sender, your water temp sender, your starter solenoid wire, all that stuff, you know, whatever, tack signal goes to a junction terminal. And I could do the same thing here. I could mount the PCM on the engine, make the simple, very short, compact wiring harness, and then everything that needs to go to the boat would just go to a big junction terminal, and it'd be really simple to wire the boat after that. The engine would be pre-wired. I could test fire the engine with everything hooked up to it. You know, I could hook a garden hose up to the thing and test fire the engine sitting here on a stand, like, very easily. So everything that's got to go up to the dashboard, your serial data, your coolant temp, oil pressure, your ignition wire, your starter solenoid wire, tack signal will come from the PCM. Oh, I'm trying to think of what else. A few other wires, and that should be pretty much it, I would think. So I think that's how I'm going to do it. I mean, the engine's doesn't get very hot in a marine application. So, and it's not mounted in rubber, it's not bouncing around, and it's going to be attached directly to the boat, bolted to the boat. So I don't think it'll be a problem having the PCM hanging right off of the back or the front of one of the cylinder heads. I don't think it'll bother it a bit. So yeah, here's those two, how I did the adapters. You just essentially weld them together. And the way I did these holes, rather than welding these and drilling and tapping them, I've had bad luck with that in the past. Drilling and tapping a weld, breaking bits and taps. So I chamfered both sides of these holes with this bugger, on the front and the back. And these are like drop-in anchors, like masonry anchors, basically. I cut the threaded portion of these off, 3/8 of an inch thick, same thickness as the flange, and laid these things on a flat piece of aluminum and just dropped all my little thread inserts in. And because it was chamfered, you have a like a groove around the outside of the thing to fill with weld. So I did that, welded them all on one side, flap or wheel them down until they're flat again, and then you just flip them over and do the same thing, weld them back up, flap or wheel them down, and in here in the center, you got a clearance for those center two bolts like I was talking about, and then you got to cut the end of it off in order to clearance for the outside ones. You got two of them that sit right in here, that they already fit. They barely clear the inside of this. So it actually wasn't that bad to do. And if you're considering doing something similar, I mean, it's a little bit more work, but it'll save you quite a bit of money, because I think your next cheapest option is, if you look up, I think PCM or Crusader, they make manifolds, because they have I think they both have a 6-liter marine engine, and I think it came to with their manifolds and risers will put you at $800 or $900 roughly. I mean, that's like the cheapest option. Which, don't get me wrong, those are nice. They're going to flow a lot better. They're aluminum, so they're going to weigh a lot less than Mercruiser shit. So, it has its advantages, but, I got a couple $100 into the adapters, the hardware, and the manifolds themselves. So, we'll see how it works out. I met a couple people telling me that they're, concerned about reversion with the camshaft, and I don't think I'm going to have a problem with reversion with this completely stock truck cam. But hey, I may be wrong, but we'll see. I still got to get an aft body oil pan. That's not going to work. Truck pan sits too low. So, but I'm thinking about keeping the truck intake. Maybe. Not 100% sure yet. If I find a really good deal on a car intake, I still might run one. Just because I think they look better, and it doesn't matter in terms of power output, really. All of the low-end torque I'd be sacrificing, even with an LS1 intake, I just don't think it's going to make that much of a difference. So, I think that's about it. This motor had 180,000 miles on it, so I haven't done I want to do like a compression test and make sure that there's, I'm assuming it's fine, but in pretty much every one of these stupid engines that I've bought, they're good motors. That's why I like them. You don't have to take them all apart if you really don't want to. It might have a little rattle to it or something from a lazy lifter after you put it together, but it'll still run fine. So, yeah, I'll keep you updated. We were gonna bring the boat in here. We cleaned the garage all out. And we are gonna bring it in here and put it on jack stands, but we started thinking we should probably go and get it sandblasted before we bring it in the garage. Inside and out, just blast the entire thing, so we got a fresh slate to work with. So, yep, we'll keep chugging along. I'm gonna finish up a couple of these side projects so I can buy pretty much. They'll pretty much fund the whole rest of this project. I can sit down and just buy everything I need and have it all sitting here, like I did with the Jeep. So instead of, you know, buying one or two things every week or two and the project taking forever, I'd rather just do some side jobs and just work up, get the entire budget in my hands and just sit down one afternoon and buy everything that I need and have it all here. It just makes the project go so much frickin' quicker. The Jeep was just, it got knocked out in not very much time at all. So, yeah, I'll keep you updated. We're slowly coming together here. Thanks for watching.